In this section, we'll be dealing with permutations. What is a permutation? A permutation is a change in sequence. In general, on the test, when you are asked to find permutations, you need to find different possible sequences from a given sequence. For example, there are 6 possible permutations of the sequence ABC. You can have ABC, ACB, BAC, BCA, CBA, or CAB. These are all different permutations of the same sequence, ABC. In other words, in a permutation, order matters. For example, if a musician is supposed to play 5 different songs at a concert, and she has to pick the order in which she will play those songs, she's essentially dealing with a permutation. She could play song A first, and then song B, then song C, then song D, then song E. So that's one order in which she could play the songs, A, then B, then C, then D, then E. Or she could play song B, then song E, then song D, then song A, then song C. So this is a different order in which she can play the same songs. And here's a third order in which you can play the same songs. So there's many different ways you can play, there's many different orders in which you can play the same 5 songs. So how do we figure out the total number of permutations, or the total number of set lists, for example, for this musician, the total number of 5 song sequences? Well, first you have to ascertain how many choices does this musician have to make. She has to choose which song to play first. Then she has to choose which song to play second. Then she has to choose which song to play third, which song to play fourth, and finally which song to play fifth. So this musician has to make 5 choices. This is important to realize, that there are 5 choices to be made. You have to choose which song to play first, second, third, fourth, fifth. You then have to think, how many options are there for each choice? So let's take a look at this. We know that the musician has 5 songs. So how many options does she have for song 1? Well, she can play any of those 5 songs. So she has 5 options for song 1. Suppose she picks song A. Now, how many options are there left? There are now 4 options left for song 2. So once assuming she can't repeat songs. So if she chose one song, any song for song 1, then she has one less choice, one less option for choice 2. It means she now has only 4 songs to choose, 4 options to choose from for choice 2. Let's say she chooses song B, so now there's 3 options for song 3. Only she has to choose between C, D, and E. Let's suppose she chooses C, so now there's 2 options for song 4, either D or E. And finally, let's say she chooses D, and there's only 1 option for song 5. She has to choose song E. So her options get progressively limited as she goes through her choices. She's most free for song 1. She can pick whatever she wants. But by the time she gets to song 5, she's very limited and has to pick the only song remaining. This is an important thing to realize, that when you're not repeating, your options go down as you're picking from the same sequence in order to make a permutation. So now that we've laid out how many choices this musician has and how many options she has for each choice, this is a very simple maneuver we have, which is we multiply the options. So we're going to multiply 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 to get 120. And 120 is the number of permutations there are when you have 5 choices and you can't repeat. In other words, you have to think about options and choices. Once you figure out how many choices there are, figure out how many options there are for each choice. Once you figure out how many options there are for each choice, multiply the options, and that's the total number of permutations. Let's take a look at it again. So in the sequence A, B, C, D, F, how many 4-letter permutations are there? Well, we could do A, B, C, or D. We could do A, B, D, or C. These are different 4-letter permutations from A, B, C, D, F. We could also do E, F, C, A, and so on. The key here is that there are 4 letters in this 4-letter permutation that we're going to make out of a total of 6. So it turns out that we have 4 choices to make. We have to choose what's going to be our first letter, and what's going to be our second letter, what's going to be our third letter, and finally what's going to be our 4th letter. So if you're making a 4-letter permutation, you have to choose 4 times. Once we've ascertained how many choices we have to make, we now figure out how many options that we have for each choice. So, remember, we're starting with 6 letters, A, B, C, D, E, or F. So for our first choice, we're most free, we can pick any of those 6 letters. So we have 6 options for that first choice. Let's suppose we pick A. Now we're going to have 5 options for the next choice. So once we picked A, we have only B, C, D, E, or F to pick from. So we have 5 options. If we pick B, then we're going to have only 4 options for our next choice. We're only going to have C, D, E, or F. If we pick C, for example, then we're only going to have 3 options for our next choice. We're only going to be able to pick from D, E, or F. Let's suppose we pick D. We have 2 options for the next choice, but it turns out that we don't care about how many options we have for choice 5, because we're only choosing 4 times. It's a 4-letter permutation. So just like in the previous example, we're going to multiply these together, and we're going to get 360. And 360 is the total number of permutations, 4-letter permutations you can have from a 6-letter sequence. Let's take a look at this question. So if a restaurant offers 5 appetizers, 6 entrees, and 3 desserts, how many different meals are possible? Let's say a meal consists of an appetizer, an entree, and a dessert. This is a permutation question because once again we're dealing with choices and options. So we have to figure out how many times we have to make a choice and then how many options we have for each choice. So we first have to choose what to have as an appetizer. Then we have to choose what to have as an entree. And finally we have to choose what to have as a dessert. How many options are there for the appetizers? It turns out there is 5 options for each appetizer because there's 5 appetizers. There's 6 options for each entree because there's 6 entrees. And there's 3 options for the dessert because there's 3 desserts. Because we're being asked to find how many different meals are possible, we're being asked to find, in other words, the permutations here of appetizers, entree, and desserts. And so we'll just multiply these, and 5 times 6 times 3 gives us 90. So it turns out that if the restaurant offers 5 appetizers, 6 entrees, and 3 desserts, there are 90 different meals possible. And finally, let's take a look at this. What is 5 with an exclamation point after it? This is not a really excited 5. This is 5 factorial. This is the mathematical symbol for saying factorial, or 5 factorial. What does that mean? Well, the formula is x factorial is equal to x times x minus 1 times x minus 2 times x minus 3 all the way until 1. So this is similar to the permutations we've been doing where your options steadily decrease. So for example, 5 factorial is going to be 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And that equals 120. So when finding the factorial or something, just subtract 1 from it until you get down to 1, and then multiply all those numbers.